I'm Shannon Cooper, 28, and literally last weekend, my dream of a perfect wedding day? Yeah, it nearly crumbled. The love I'd poured into planning every detail, down to the peonies in my bouquet and the fairy lights twinkling over the reception, was almost hijacked. It blew up into a full-on spectacle at our beautiful lakeside venue. My sister Veronica straight up demanded I let her shine, and when I didn't, the room went dead silent. "You're so selfish, Shannon," she hissed, with every guest staring like they'd just witnessed a car crash. But here's the tea. Her stunt didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying comeback you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost wild what I did once I decided to stand my ground. The morning of my wedding started with a flutter in my chest, like 1,000 butterflies waking up. I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel suite, my ivory dress hugging my frame, its lace sleeves catching the soft morning light. My best friend Mia was fussing with my veil, her fingers trembling with excitement. "You look like a damn queen, Shan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I smiled, but my stomach churned. Not just from nerves about marrying Ethan, the man who'd been my rock for 5 years, but from the nagging dread of what Veronica might do. My sister had a knack for turning my moments into her stage, and I knew today wouldn't be different. I smoothed my hands down the satin of my dress, feeling the fabric's cool reassurance. Ethan and I had planned this day for over a year, every choice deliberate, from the acoustic guitarist strumming our favorite song to the handwritten vows I'd spent weeks perfecting. I wanted it to be ours, a celebration of the life we were building. But Veronica? She'd always seen my happiness as a threat. Growing up, she'd charm everyone with her dimpled smile and sharp wit, while I, the quieter one, faded into the background. I'd learned to live with it, but today was mine, or so I thought. As I sipped chamomile tea to calm my nerves, my phone buzzed on the vanity. A text from my cousin Lila. "Veronica's here. She's wearing white." My heart sank. I set the cup down, the porcelain clinking against the saucer. Mia's eyes widened as she read over my shoulder. "She's wearing what?" she whispered, her voice sharp with disbelief. I forced a laugh, but it came out brittle. "Classic Veronica," I said, trying to sound unbothered. Inside, I was reeling. White? On my wedding day? It wasn't just a fashion faux pas, it was a declaration of war. I took a deep breath, remembering the plan I'd been crafting for months. Veronica's antics weren't new. She'd upstaged my high school graduation by accidentally spilling wine on my dress, and at my college send-off she'd announced her engagement to her now-fiancé, Derek, stealing the room's attention. But this time, I wasn't the naive little sister. I'd seen this coming. Over the past year, I'd quietly collected evidence, texts, voicemails, even a video of her bragging about making Shannon's day all about me. My friends, Mia and Lila included, were in on it, ready to help me turn the tables. I glanced at the clock. 10 a.m. 2 hours until the ceremony. I could hear the hum of guests arriving downstairs, their laughter floating up through the open window. My mom called from the hallway, her voice cheerful but strained. "Shannon, honey, you ready?" I caught her reflection in the mirror as she poked her head in, her smile faltering when she saw my face. She knew Veronica's history too, but she'd always brushed it off as sibling rivalry. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Almost, Mom." But my mind was racing, calculating. Veronica's white dress was just the opening act. I knew she'd have more up her sleeve. Mia squeezed my hand, her brown eyes fierce. "We've got this, Shan, she won't know what hit her." I nodded, grateful for her loyalty. Ethan had no idea about the plan. He thought today would be drama-free, bless his optimistic heart. I didn't want to burden him with Veronica's chaos. This was my battle, and I'd fight it with the precision of a chess master. I slipped my phone into my clutch, where the USB drive with the evidence waited. My fingers brushed against it, a small but heavy reminder of what was coming. As I stepped out of the suite, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor, I caught a glimpse of myself in the full-length mirror. The girl staring back wasn't the pushover Veronica expected. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of my veil and the resolve in my chest. The ceremony was about to start, and I'd walk down that aisle with my head high, knowing I was ready for whatever Veronica threw at me. Let her try to steal my day. I was about to steal it right back. The hum of the wedding morning faded as I stood at the top of the staircase, my veil trailing behind me, but my mind slipped back to memories that stung like paper cuts. Veronica's shadow had loomed over every milestone I'd ever had, her need to be the center of attention as predictable as the sunrise. I could still feel the heat of my high school graduation, the way my cap sat awkwardly on my curls, my diploma clutched in my hand. I'd worked so hard for that moment, valedictorian, full scholarship to college, but as I stepped off the stage, glowing with pride, Veronica tripped and splashed red wine across my white dress. The crowd gasped, then laughed as she apologized with that syrupy smile, saying, "Oh, Shannon, I'm so clumsy." My mom rushed to her side, cooing over Veronica's embarrassment, while I stood there, my moment drowned in Merlot. I blinked back to the present, my fingers tightening around the banister. That wasn't the only time. My 16th birthday party? Veronica announced she'd landed the lead in the school play, and suddenly everyone was toasting her. My college acceptance letter arrived, and at the family dinner to celebrate, she casually mentioned her promotion at work, steering the conversation to her. Each time I swallowed my hurt, smiled, and let her shine. I was the good sister, the one who didn't make waves. But those moments piled up like stones in my chest, heavy and cold. I remembered one particular Christmas, maybe 5 years ago. I just won a regional art contest for a painting I'd poured my heart into, my first real validation as an artist. I brought the framed piece to our family's holiday party, nervous but excited to show it off. Dad barely glanced at it, muttering, "That's nice, Shannon," before turning to Veronica, who was holding court by the fireplace, regaling everyone with stories of her latest modeling gig. "You're a star, Ronnie," he said, his eyes bright with pride. I stood there, the frame digging into my palms, invisible. Later, when I found Veronica alone, I asked her why she always had to take over. She laughed, tossing her hair. "Don't be so sensitive, Shan. It's not my fault people are drawn to me." That memory burned as I descended the stairs now, the chatter of guests growing louder. Veronica's ability to eclipse me wasn't just charm, it was calculated. She'd always known how to play the room, how to make my achievements feel small. Even when I started my event planning business, scraping by to build a name for myself, she'd swoop in at family gatherings with tales of her glamorous life, her engagement to Derek, her perfect world. Mom would beam, Dad would nod, and I'd be left picking at my plate, my successes unspoken. But those slights taught me something. They made me sharp, observant. I learned to watch Veronica's patterns, her coy glances, the way she'd pause for effect before dropping a bombshell. By the time Ethan proposed, I knew she'd try to ruin my wedding. She couldn't stand me having something she didn't. That's when I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed how she'd linger after family dinners, whispering to Mom about how my wedding plans were cute but basic. I overheard her on the phone once, giggling to a friend about how she'd make sure everyone remembers my part in Shannon's big day. That's when I knew I couldn't just hope for the best. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I caught sight of my reflection in a gilded mirror. My eyes were steady, but my knuckles were white against the banister. I thought of my 21st birthday, another moment Veronica stole. I'd planned a quiet dinner with friends, but she showed up uninvited, in a sequined dress that screamed for attention, and announced she was moving to Paris for a life-changing internship. My friends fawned over her, and I spent the night refilling their glasses, my birthday forgotten. That night, I'd cried in my room, promising myself I'd never let her do that again. Now, standing in my wedding dress, I felt that old hurt flare. But it was different this time. It fueled me. Veronica thought she could waltz in and make today about her, but I wasn't that invisible girl anymore. I'd spent months preparing, not just for my marriage to Ethan, but for this battle. The USB drive in my clutch held proof of her scheming, texts where she mocked my dress, voicemails plotting to upstage me, a video of her laughing about faking a pregnancy to steal the show. Every slight, every stolen moment had built me into someone who wouldn't just take it. I stepped into the foyer where guests milled about, their smiles warm but tinged with curiosity. I could feel their eyes on me, but I was searching for one person. There, by the entrance, I spotted her, Veronica, in a white dress that rivaled mine, chatting animatedly with a group of our cousins. Her laughter rang out, sharp and deliberate, My heart thudded, but I kept my face serene. Mia appeared at my side, her hand brushing mine. "Ready?" she whispered. I nodded, my lips curving into a small, determined smile. Veronica had no idea what was coming. The moment I saw Veronica in that white dress, my resolve hardened like steel, but it was the months of quiet preparation that gave me the upper hand. I'd known she'd try something. Her history of stealing my spotlight wasn't just a habit. It was her oxygen. So last spring, when Ethan and I started planning the wedding, I decided I wouldn't just brace for her chaos. I'd outsmart it. That's when the idea for my counterplan was born. A secret I'd kept even from Ethan. Because I wanted him to enjoy our day without the weight of my sister's shadow. Standing in the foyer now with guests swirling around me, I felt the USB drive in my clutch like a talisman, holding months of evidence that would turn Veronica's game against her. It started with a hunch, back in March. I'd overheard Veronica at a family brunch, her voice low but smug as she told Mom, "Shannon's wedding will be cute, but I'll make sure it's memorable for the right reasons." Her tone was all I needed to know she was planning something big. I didn't confront her. Veronica thrived on reactions. Instead, I got strategic. I started paying closer attention, keeping my phone's voice recorder handy during family gatherings. At first, it felt paranoid, but then I caught her on a call in our parents' backyard, laughing with a friend. "I'm gonna make Shannon's wedding all about me," she said, her voice dripping with glee. "Wait till you see what I've got planned." My thumb hovered over the stop button, but I let it record, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and vindication. That recording was just the start. Over the next few months, I became a quiet detective. Veronica was careless, assuming I was too meek to fight back. She'd text her friends in group chats I was part of, dropping hints about her big surprise for my wedding. One message read, "Shannon's dress is so plain, wait till they see mine." I screenshot it, my fingers trembling. Another time, she left her phone unlocked at a coffee shop meetup, and I saw a thread with her best friend Tara, plotting a dramatic announcement to steal the show. I snapped photos of the screen, my coffee growing cold as I worked fast. Each piece of evidence felt like a brick in the wall I was building, a wall to protect my day. The real breakthrough came in June, at a cousin's baby shower. Veronica, tipsy on mimosas, pulled me aside and bragged about her plan to fake a pregnancy announcement at my reception. "It'll be iconic," she slurred, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Everyone will forget your little vows." I smiled tightly, excusing myself to the bathroom, where I locked the door and recorded a voice memo to capture her words before they faded from my mind. Later, I convinced Lila, who was close to Tara, to secretly record a conversation where Veronica detailed her scheme, laughing about how she'd cry on cue to sell the pregnancy lie. Lila sent me the video, her text reading, "This is disgusting, Shan. You've got her." Piecing it all together was grueling. Late nights, after Ethan was asleep, I'd sit at my desk, headphones on, organizing files on my laptop. Texts, voicemails, that damning video. It was a digital arsenal. I shared everything with Mia and Lila, my trusted allies. We met at a diner, away from prying family eyes, and mapped out the plan. Mia, ever the tech whiz, suggested we compile the evidence into a video montage, short but devastating, to play at the reception if Veronica crossed the line. Lila offered to coordinate with the AV guy at the venue, ensuring we could cue it up seamlessly. "She'll never see it coming," Mia said, her eyes fierce. I nodded, but my stomach twisted. I hated that it had come to this, that I had to weaponize my sister's own words. As I stood in the foyer now, the weight of those months pressed against me. I'd sacrificed sleep, peace, even moments of wedding planning joy, to build this safeguard. My fingers brushed the clutch again, feeling the outline of the USB drive. It wasn't just evidence, it was my armor. I glanced at Veronica, still charming our cousins, her white dress gleaming under the chandelier. She thought she was untouchable, but I'd spent months preparing for this exact moment. I wasn't just the bride today, I was a strategist, ready to reclaim my day. A guest bumped into me, apologizing with a smile, pulling me back to the present. The ceremony was minutes away, and I could hear the guitarist tuning up outside. Ethan was waiting at the altar, oblivious to the storm brewing. I wanted to protect that innocence in him, to let him believe today was just about us. But as I caught Veronica's smirk from across the room, I knew the battle was already underway. my heart steadied. I'd built this plan brick by brick, and soon I'd use it to tear down her facade. The morning sun filtered through the venue's tall windows, casting a golden glow over the lakeside lawn where my wedding was about to unfold. But my nerves were a live wire, sparking with anticipation of Veronica's inevitable stunt. I stood in the bridal suite, my bouquet of peonies trembling slightly in my hands as I adjusted my veil for the 10th time. The clock read 11:30 a.m. 30 minutes until I'd walked down the aisle to Ethan, the man who made me feel like I was enough, even when my family didn't. But Veronica's white dress, still fresh in my mind from Lila's text, loomed like a storm cloud. I knew it was just her opening move, a calculated jab to rattle me before the ceremony even began. My plan, carefully built over months, was ready, but the weight of executing it felt heavier now with the moment so close. Mia bustled around me, checking my train, her usual chatter replaced by a focused quiet. "You okay, Shan?" she asked, catching my eye in the mirror. I nodded, but my throat tightened. I wanted to tell her how much I dreaded this, not just Veronica's drama but the fact that I had to be ready for it, that my wedding day wasn't just about love but about survival. Instead, I said, "Just want to get to the I do part." She squeezed my shoulder, her touch grounding me. Lila slipped in, her phone clutched tightly. "AV guy's set," she whispered. "USB's loaded, ready to go if she pulls anything." I gave her a small smile, grateful for my allies, but my stomach churned. This was supposed to be my day, not a chess match. I glanced out the window at the guests settling into their seats, white chairs lined up in neat rows facing the floral arch Ethan and I had designed together. I could see him now, standing at the altar, adjusting his tie, his easy smile calming me even from a distance. He had no idea about the USB drive in my clutch or the evidence I'd collected. Texts, voicemails, that video of Veronica plotting to hijack my reception. I hadn't told him because I wanted to shield him from her chaos, to let him believe today was pure. But as I smoothed my dress, I felt the weight of that choice. What if the plan backfired? What if exposing Veronica turned our wedding into a spectacle for all the wrong reasons? My mom knocked softly and entered, her face a mix of pride and worry. "You're stunning, Shannon," she said, her voice catching. She adjusted my veil, her fingers lingering like she wanted to say more. I wondered if she sensed Veronica's storm brewing too. She'd always downplayed my sister's antics, calling them high spirits, but I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes now. "Thanks, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I wanted to ask her to rein Veronica in, but I knew it was pointless. Mom loved us both, but she'd never seen Veronica's cruelty for what it was. I'd have to handle this myself. As Mom left to join the guests, I paced the suite, my heels sinking into the plush carpet. I replayed the plan in my head. If Veronica escalated, we'd play the video during the reception, exposing her lies to everyone. Mia and Lila had rehearsed the timing with the AV guy, ensuring the montage, Veronica's mocking texts, her gloating voicemail, her drunken baby shower confession, would hit like a thunderclap. But the thought of airing our family's dirty laundry in front of 150 guests made my palms sweat. I wasn't like Veronica, I didn't crave the spotlight. I just wanted my day, my moment with Ethan, untainted. A memory flashed. Last night's rehearsal dinner, Veronica's coy smile as she toasted to Shannon's big day, her words dripping with subtext. She'd hugged me after, too tightly, whispering, "You're gonna love my surprise." I'd smiled back, my teeth gritted, knowing she was baiting me. Now as I stood here, the USB drive felt like a grenade in my clutch. I didn't want to use it, but I would if I had to. I glanced at Mia, who was checking her phone, probably texting Lila to confirm everything was in place. "She's already working the crowd," Mia muttered, showing me a photo Lila sent. Veronica posing with guests, her white dress gleaming. My jaw clenched, but I forced a deep breath. The guitarist's first chords drifted in, signaling the start. I grabbed my bouquet, the peony's soft petals brushing my fingers, and looked at Mia. "Let's do this," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. She grinned, fierce and ready. As we stepped toward the door, I caught one last glimpse of myself in the mirror. A bride, yes, but also a warrior. Veronica thought she could steal my day, but I was ready to fight for it. The aisle awaited, and so did my chance to take back what was mine. The ceremony unfolded like a dream, with Ethan's warm eyes anchoring me as I walked down the aisle. But the moment Veronica stepped into view, her white dress gleaming like a spotlight, the air shifted. I stood at the altar, my hands clasped in Ethan's, his calloused fingers steadying mine as the officiant spoke of love and commitment. The guests' smiles, the soft strum of the guitarist, the peonies framing the arch, it was everything I'd envisioned. But then I caught movement to my left. Veronica, seated in the front row, had adjusted her posture, her ivory gown catching the sunlight just so, drawing every eye. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and I saw Aunt Clara nudge her husband, her brows raised. My smile faltered, but I kept my gaze on Ethan, who squeezed my hand, oblivious to the stunt. Veronica's dress wasn't just white. It was a near replica of mine, with delicate lace sleeves and a flowing train, chosen to scream bride louder than my own. I'd expected her to pull something, but this was bold, even for her. My chest tightened, a familiar ache from years of her stealing my moments. I forced myself to focus on Ethan's vows, his voice low and earnest as he promised to stand by me through every storm. I wanted to lose myself in his words, but I could feel Veronica's presence, like a heat wave, her calculated elegance pulling focus. When it was my turn to speak, my voice wavered slightly, but I pushed through, vowing to love Ethan with all I am. The guests clapped, but I caught Veronica's smirk, her head tilted just enough to signal she wasn't done. As we kissed, sealing our marriage, the crowd erupted, but I heard a distinct gasp from the front row. Veronica had stood, adjusting her dress with a flourish, her train spilling dramatically onto the grass. "Oh, sorry," she said loudly, her voice carrying a faux innocence that made my skin crawl. Guests turned, some chuckling, others murmuring. My mom, seated beside her, patted her arm as if soothing a child, while Dad stared at his program, avoiding my eyes. I gripped Ethan's hand, my nails digging into his palm. He leaned in, whispering, "You okay, babe?" I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I was seething. This was just the beginning. We moved to the reception area, a tented space adorned with fairy lights and long tables draped in linen. Guests mingled, sipping champagne, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. I tried to soak it in, Ethan's arm around my waist, Mia's proud grin as she adjusted my veil, but Veronica was already working the room. I watched her glide from table to table, her dress swishing, her laughter loud enough to turn heads. "Isn't she stunning?" I overheard a distant cousin say, and my stomach twisted. She wasn't just upstaging me, she was rewriting the narrative, making my wedding her stage. Mia sidled up, her eyes narrowed. "She's milking it," she muttered, handing me a glass of water. I sipped it, my throat dry. "Let her," I said, my voice low. "She's digging her own grave." Mia's lips twitched, a spark of pride in her eyes. The USB drive was still in my clutch, now tucked into a hidden pocket of my dress, and I could feel its weight against my hip. Lila caught my eye from across the tent, giving a subtle nod. The AV system was ready, the video cued. But I didn't want to use it yet. I wanted to give Veronica a chance to stop, to let me have this day. A naive hope, maybe. But it lingered. Then came the first toast. Ethan's best man Jake stood, his speech heartfelt, poking fun at Ethan's terrible dance moves and praising my patience. The crowd laughed, and for a moment I relaxed, leaning into Ethan's shoulder. But as Jake finished, Veronica stood, uninvited, her glass raised. "I just have to say something," she announced, her voice syrupy sweet. My heart sank. She launched into a speech about sisterhood, her eyes glistening with crocodile tears. "Shannon's so lucky to have this day," she said, pausing dramatically, "but I'm just so grateful to share it with her." The guests cooed, but I saw the glint in her eye, the challenge. She was setting the stage for something bigger. I glanced at Mia, who mouthed, "Now?" I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Veronica's dress was a power play, her toast a jab, but I knew her real move was coming. I'd seen her texts, heard her plans. She wouldn't stop at subtle. As she sat down to applause, her smile triumphant, I felt my resolve solidify. This was my wedding, my love, my moment. She could try to steal it, but I was ready to fight back. The reception was in full swing, fairy lights twinkling above the dance floor, but the air thickened with tension as Veronica seized her moment to escalate her takeover. I sat at the head table, Ethan's hand warm in mine, trying to savor the clink of glasses and the laughter of our guests. The band played a soft jazz number, and couples swayed under the tense glow. I wanted to lose myself in the joy of being Ethan's wife, but Veronica's earlier toast lingered like a bad taste. Her words about sharing my day were a prelude, and I knew the main act was coming. My fingers brushed the hidden pocket of my dress, where the USB drive waited, a silent promise of retaliation. Then it happened. As the band paused and the caterers cleared the main course, Veronica stood again, this time at the center of the tent, her white dress catching every light. She tapped her glass with a spoon, the ping cutting through the chatter. "Everyone, I have an announcement," she called, her voice bright but trembling with theatrical emotion. The room stilled, heads turning, forks pausing mid-air. My stomach dropped. I knew this move. I'd heard it in that drunken confession at the baby shower, recorded on Lila's phone. She was about to fake a pregnancy to hijack my reception. "I wasn't going to say anything," Veronica continued, her hand resting on her flat stomach, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. "But I can't keep it in anymore. Derek and I were expecting." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aunt Clara clutched her chest, and my cousin Mark clapped Derek on the back. Derek, standing nearby, looked confused, his brow furrowing as he stared at Veronica. My mom's face lit up, her hands clasped in delight, while Dad nodded approvingly. The guests erupted in cheers, some standing to toast. I sat frozen, my nails digging into my palms, the roar of applause drowning out the band's next chord. Ethan leaned in, his voice low. "Did you know about this?" I shook my head, my throat tight. I couldn't look at him, couldn't explain that I'd known she'd try this. Not the pregnancy itself, but the need to steal my spotlight. Veronica's performance was flawless. The shy smile, the hand on her stomach, the way she glanced at me with just enough pity to make it sting. "I didn't want to overshadow you, Shannon," she said, loud enough for the mic to catch, "but I just had to share our joy." The crowd cooed and I felt their eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. I forced a smile, my lips trembling, and raised my glass, but inside, I was screaming. Mia, seated to my left, gripped my arm under the table. "She's doing it," she hissed. "The pregnancy lie." I nodded, my eyes locked on Veronica, who was now accepting hugs from guests, her laughter ringing out. Lila caught my gaze from across the room, her hand hovering near her phone, signaling readiness. The plan was in place: play the video, expose her lies, but I hesitated. This was my wedding, my moment with Ethan. Did I want it defined by this confrontation? My heart pounded, torn between letting her win and fighting back. I glanced at Derek, who still looked uneasy, his smile strained as he accepted congratulations. I remembered the video, Veronica's drunken giggle as she told Tara, "I'll fake a pregnancy. Derek won't know until it's too late." She'd planned to trap him, to use this lie to bind him closer, all while ruining my day. The thought ignited something in me, not just anger, but clarity. I couldn't let her rewrite my story again. I leaned toward Mia, my voice barely a whisper. "Tell Lila to cue it up." Mia's eyes widened, but she nodded, slipping away to signal Lila. I stood, smoothing my dress, and tapped my glass, mirroring Veronica's move. The room quieted again, curious. "I'd like to say something," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. Veronica's head snapped up, her smile faltering. "This day means so much to Ethan and me," I continued, "and I'm so grateful for everyone here, but there's something you all need to see." My hands trembled, but I kept my gaze on Veronica, who shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tightening around her glass. The AV screen flickered to life behind me. I didn't turn to look. I knew what was coming. The guests' murmurs faded as the first clip played. Veronica's voice, clear and smug from that baby shower. "I'm gonna fake a pregnancy at Shannon's wedding. It'll be iconic." The tent went silent, the air heavy with shock. Veronica's face drained of color, her mouth opening, but no words came out. I stood tall, my heart racing, ready for what came next. The tent was a vacuum of silence, the weight of Veronica's recorded words hanging like fog as the video played on, exposing her calculated cruelty. The screen behind me flickered with the montage we'd prepared. First, her drunken confession at the baby shower, laughing about faking a pregnancy to steal the show. Then, a grainy phone video of her bragging to Tara about wearing a white dress to outshine Shannon's basic gown. Finally, a string of text messages flashed up, her words stark against the screen. "She'll cry, and I'll look like the victim. Perfect." Gasps punctuated the air, sharp and scattered, as guests leaned forward, their eyes darting between the screen and Veronica, who stood frozen at the center of the tent, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. I stood at the head table, My heart hammering but my posture steady, Ethan's hand brushing mine in quiet support. He hadn't known about the plan, and I felt his confusion in the way his fingers tensed, but he didn't pull away. The video looped back to her voice. Everyone will forget Shannon's little vows. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and I saw Aunt Clara's mouth drop open, her hand clutching her husband's arm. My mom's face crumpled, her eyes darting to me, then to Veronica as if pleading for an explanation. Dad stared at the ground, his knuckles white around his fork. Derek, Veronica's fiancé, stood rigid, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on her like he was seeing her for the first time. Veronica's head snapped toward me, her face a mask of panic and fury. "Shannon, what is this?" she demanded, her voice shrill, cracking the silence. She took a step forward, her white dress catching the light. But the confidence she'd worn all day was gone. "This is fake. She's trying to ruin me." Her words were desperate, but the guests weren't buying it. The evidence was too clear, her own voice betraying her. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, letting the truth do the work. Lila, stationed near the AV booth, gave me a subtle nod, her finger hovering over the controls in case we needed to replay. Mia, back at my side, whispered, "Keep going, Shan." I took a deep breath, my fingers brushing the lace of my dress, grounding myself. "Veronica," I said, my voice calm but carrying across the tent, "you planned this for months. You wanted to take this day from me. But I'm not invisible anymore." The words felt like a release, years of swallowed hurt pouring out. The guests leaned in, some nodding, others whispering. I saw my cousin Mark cross his arms, his expression hardening as he looked at Veronica. The video ended, the screen going dark, but the silence lingered, heavy with judgment. Veronica's eyes darted around, searching for an ally, but even her usual supporters, our mom, her friends, looked away. Derek stepped forward, his voice low but cutting. "Is this true?" he asked her, his face a mix of disbelief and disgust. Veronica stammered, her hands flailing. "Derek, it's not what it looks like. She edited it." But her voice cracked, and he shook his head, stepping back. "You lied about a baby? To ruin your sister's wedding?" His words hit like a slap, and Veronica's face crumpled, her bravado collapsing. I glanced at Ethan, who was staring at me, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and concern. "You okay?" he mouthed. I nodded, squeezing his hand. I hadn't wanted this moment to define our day, but it was too late to turn back. The guests were murmuring now, some openly glaring at Veronica. Aunt Clara whispered loudly to her husband, "I always knew she was trouble." My mom's hands covered her face, and I felt a pang. She hadn't stopped Veronica all these years, but she didn't deserve this public humiliation either. Still, this wasn't about her. It was about me, reclaiming my day. Veronica made one last attempt, her voice rising. "You're all believing her over me? She's jealous." But the room wasn't hers anymore. A guest near the back stood, shaking his head, and others followed, their body language shifting. Arms crossed, heads turned away. I didn't need to say more, the evidence had spoken. Veronica's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw her as small, not the larger-than-life sister who'd always overshadowed me. The USB drive in my pocket felt lighter now, its purpose fulfilled. I'd exposed her, not out of spite, but to protect what was mine. The tent buzzed with tension, the aftermath of the video lingering like smoke, but I stood tall at the head table, ready to confront Veronica's hypocrisy head-on. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with desperation as she scanned the room for any remaining allies, but the guests' murmurs had turned cold, their earlier admiration replaced by disgust. Derek, her fiancé, stood a few feet away, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on her like he was seeing a stranger. My heart still raced from the video's impact, but a calm settled over me, a clarity I hadn't felt in years. This was my moment, not just to expose Veronica but to reclaim my voice. I stepped forward, my voice steady, carrying over the hushed crowd. "Veronica, you've spent years making my moments about you," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "My graduation, my birthdays, every milestone. You couldn't stand me having something you didn't." Her mouth opened but no words came. I pressed on, my words measured but sharp. "You plan to ruin my wedding, to lie about a pregnancy, to hurt me and Derek just to feel bigger. But you're not bigger. You're just small." The last word landed like a stone and I saw her flinch, her hands clutching the folds of her white dress. The guests were silent, their eyes darting between us. My mom's face was buried in her hands, Dad's jaw tight, both unable to meet my gaze. I felt a pang for them, but I couldn't stop now. I have the texts, the voicemails, the proof, I continued, gesturing toward the now dark AV screen. You mocked my dress, my vows, my happiness. But today, I'm done letting you rewrite my story. A few guests nodded, their faces hardening as they looked at Veronica. Aunt Clara muttered, "Shameful," loud enough for those nearby to hear. Veronica's eyes flashed with fury, but her voice was shaky. "You're twisting everything, Shannon. You're the jealous one." Her accusation was weak, a reflex, and it fell flat. Derek shook his head, stepping closer to her. "Stop, Veronica," he said, his voice low but firm. "I heard you on that video. You lied to me, to everyone." His words cut through the tent, and I saw tears well in her eyes, not the crocodile tears from her fake announcement, but real ones born of being caught. She reached for his arm, but he pulled away, his face a mix of betrayal and resolve. I turned to the guests, my hands trembling but my voice steady. This day is about love. Mine and Ethan's. Not lies, not drama. I glanced at Ethan, who stood beside me, his eyes shining with pride. He hadn't known about the plan, but his hand in mine told me he was with me now. "I'm sorry you had to see this," I said to the crowd, "but I couldn't let her take this from us." A few guests clapped softly, others nodded, their support a quiet wave washing over me. Veronica's shoulders slumped, her dress no longer commanding attention but looking garish in the dimming light. "You've ruined everything," she whispered, but it was aimed at me, not herself. I shook my head. "No, Veronica, you did that." I turned away, signaling the band to start the next song, a lively number to shift the mood. The guests hesitated, then began to move, some heading to the dance floor, others whispering among themselves. Veronica stood alone for a moment before storming toward the exit, her train dragging behind her. Derek didn't follow. I felt Ethan's arm around my waist, pulling me close. "You were incredible," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I leaned into him, the weight of the moment lifting slightly. Mia and Leela flanked me, their faces beaming with pride. "You slayed," Mia said, her voice low but fierce. Leela nodded, squeezing my hand. "She's done, Shan." I glanced toward the exit, where Veronica's silhouette vanished into the evening. The USB drive in my pocket felt like a relic now, its work complete. As the music swelled, I looked out at the guests, some dancing, others raising glasses in our direction. The tent felt lighter, the air less choked with her presence. I'd exposed her not for revenge, but for freedom. Freedom to celebrate my marriage, my love, my life. I took Ethan's hand, leading him to the dance floor, ready to reclaim my day. The music pulsed through the tent, a lively beat pulling guests to the dance floor, and I felt a shift as I stood with Ethan, Mia, and Lila, surrounded by the warmth of those who truly mattered. Veronica's dramatic exit left a void, but it was one I welcomed, like clearing smoke from a room. The fairy lights above us twinkled, casting a soft glow over the tables, and for the first time all day I let myself breathe. Ethan tugged me toward the dance floor, his grin boyish and infectious. "Come on, Mrs. Cooper," he said, his voice teasing, and I laughed, the sound surprising me with its lightness. This was what my wedding was meant to be, not a battleground, but a celebration of us. As we swayed to the music, my cheek against Ethan's shoulder, I glanced at Mia and Leela, who were nearby, twirling each other with exaggerated flair, drawing laughs from nearby guests. Their loyalty had carried me through this day, a stark contrast to Veronica's betrayal. Mia caught my eye and winked, her face flushed with triumph. Leela, still clutching her phone like a weapon, mouthed, "We did it." I nodded, my heart swelling. These were my people, the ones who saw me, not the shadow Veronica had always cast. The guests around us seemed to sense the shift too. Conversations resumed, smiles returned, and the tension from the video's bombshell began to fade. I thought back to the family dinners where I'd felt like an outsider, Veronica's charm always outshining my quiet contributions. Those moments had taught me to shrink, to let her take the stage. But Mia and Lila? They'd never let me disappear. At my college graduation party, when Veronica had hijacked the night with her engagement announcement, Mia had pulled me aside, handed me a beer and said, "You're the real star, Shan, don't let her fool you." Lila too had been there, sneaking me extra cake and whispering, "She's all talk, you're the one doing the work." Now, as we danced, their presence felt like a shield, a reminder that I'd built a family beyond the one I was born into. A guest, my old high school friend Sarah, approached, her eyes wide with admiration. "Shannon, that was, wow, you stood up to her like a boss." I smiled, my cheeks warming. "Thanks for being here," I said, meaning it. She hugged me, then joined the dance floor, her laughter mingling with the music. Other guests followed, their energy lifting the room. Aunt Clara, who'd been so quick to praise Veronica earlier, caught my arm as I passed. "I'm sorry, honey," she said, her voice low. "I didn't see her for what she was." I nodded, unsure what to say. Her apology was genuine, but it couldn't erase years of overlooking me. Ethan spun me gently, his hands steady on my waist. "You're incredible, you know that?" he said, his eyes searching mine. I hadn't told him about the plan, and I could see the question in his gaze. Why hadn't I let him in? "I didn't want to taint this for you," I admitted, my voice soft. "I wanted us to have one perfect day." He pulled me closer, his lips brushing my forehead. "It's perfect because you're here," he said. My throat tightened and I buried my face in his chest, letting the music drown out the lingering ache of Veronica's betrayal. As the song ended, Mia grabbed my hand, pulling me into a group dance with Leela and a few cousins who'd stayed loyal through the drama. We laughed, spinning under the lights, and I felt a warmth I hadn't expected. This was my chosen family. People who celebrated me, not competed with me. The contrast to those tense family dinners, where Veronica's stories always trumped mine, was stark. Here, I wasn't the overlooked sister. I was the bride, the center, surrounded by love that didn't come with conditions. I glanced toward the tense entrance, half expecting Veronica to reappear, but the doorway was empty. Derek, too, was gone, and I felt a twinge of sympathy for him. He'd been caught in her web as much as I had. But as Mia twirled me again, her laughter infectious, I let that thought go. This moment wasn't about Veronica or her fallout. It was about me, Ethan, and the people who'd stood by us. The night stretched ahead, full of promise, and I was ready to claim every second of it. The dance floor pulsed with energy, but as the night deepened, I slipped away to a quiet corner of the tent, needing a moment to process the victory and set the boundaries that would protect my peace going forward. Ethan was still out there, laughing with his groomsmen, his tie loosened, his joy untouched by the earlier drama. I leaned against a table, the fairy lights casting a soft glow on my dress, and felt the weight of the day settle. Exposing Veronica had been a triumph, but it wasn't the end. I knew she'd try to claw her way back into my life, through guilt trips, tearful apologies, or even more schemes. I wasn't going to let that happen. Today had changed me, and I was ready to draw a line in the sand. Mia found me, her face flushed from dancing, and handed me a glass of champagne. "You okay, Shan?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, taking a sip, the bubbles sharp on my tongue. "I need to make sure this doesn't happen again," I said, my voice low but firm. She tilted her head, understanding instantly. "You mean Veronica?" I nodded, my fingers tightening around the glass. "I can't keep letting her in, not after this." Mia's lips pressed into a line and she squeezed my arm. "You don't owe her anything, not anymore." I thought back to the countless times I'd forgiven Veronica. Her accidental slights, her crocodile tears when called out. After my high school graduation, when she'd ruined my dress, she'd cried to Mom, claiming it was a mistake, and I'd let it go, not wanting to seem petty. When she hijacked my college send-off with her engagement announcement, I'd smiled through it, telling myself family was more important than my hurt. But now, standing in my wedding dress, the memory of her fake pregnancy announcement still raw, I knew forgiveness wasn't the answer. It was enabling. Lila joined us, her phone finally tucked away, her expression fierce. "Derek left," she said, keeping her voice low. "He was packing his car when I stepped out for air, said he's done with her." My heart twinged. Derek didn't deserve Veronica's lies, but I couldn't fix that. My focus was on protecting my new life with Ethan, on building something untainted by her chaos. "Good," I said, surprising myself with the hardness in my voice. "I'm done with her too." Lila's eyes widened, but she nodded, a small smile breaking through. "About time, Shan." I took a deep breath, the decision crystallizing. "I'm cutting contact," I said, the words feeling both heavy and liberating. "No calls, no texts, no family dinners where she can pull this again." Mia raised her glass, her eyes gleaming. "To boundaries," she said, and Lila echoed her, clinking her water bottle against my champagne. I smiled, but my mind was already racing, mapping out the logistics. I'd block her number, unfollow her on social media, and make it clear to Mom and Dad that I wouldn't share space with her. They'd resist, Mom especially with her family stays together mantra, but I was done bending. A memory flashed. A family barbecue last summer, Veronica joking about how my event planning business was cute but small time. I'd brushed it off, but it stung, especially with Mom nodding along. Now I saw it for what it was, her need to diminish me to feel big. I wouldn't give her that power again. I glanced at Ethan, now slow dancing with his mom, his smile so genuine it made my chest ache. He deserved a wife who wasn't constantly bracing for her sister's next blow. I deserved that too. I turned to Mia and Lila, my voice steady. If she tries to reach out, I'm not engaging, and if Mom pushes, I'll tell her why. Mia grinned, fierce and proud. You're a badass, Shan. Lila nodded, adding, We've got your back, always. Their support felt like armor, stronger than the USB drive had been. As the band struck up a new song, I felt a shift inside me, a door closing on Veronica's chaos, a new one opening to a life I could control. I stepped back toward the dance floor, ready to rejoin Ethan, my heart lighter with the boundaries I'd set. The reception was alive again, the dance floor crowded with guests swaying under the fairy lights, and I stepped back into the celebration, determined to reclaim the joy of my wedding day. Ethan caught my eye from across the tent, his grin pulling me like a magnet. I wove through the crowd, my dress brushing against chairs until I reached him. He took my hand, spinning me into a slow dance, his warmth grounding me. You look happy, he said, his voice soft over the music. I nodded, my smile genuine for the first time in hours. Veronica's shadow was gone, and I was ready to fill this night with moments that were ours, mine and Ethan's, untainted by her drama. As we danced, I glanced at the guests, my cousins laughing, Mia and Lila leading a conga line, Aunt Clara swaying with her husband. These were the people who stayed, who chose to celebrate us. I thought of the family dinners, where I'd felt invisible, Veronica's voice always drowning mine out. Tonight was different. I wasn't just the bride, I was the one who'd stood up, who'd fought for my moment and won. That victory wasn't just about exposing Veronica, it was about rewriting what this day meant. It was mine, not hers.